A demonstration in Parkersburg this afternoon denounced a reported visit by the Department of Government Efficiency. Our Chase Campbell has the story.
Can we give a big cheer for this group of people?
More than 100 people gathered at Parkersburg's Bicentennial Park Tuesday to protest the Department of Government Efficiency's visit to the Bureau of the Fiscal Service. Demonstrators marched to both fiscal service buildings. People held signs and chanted slogans denouncing President Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. The protest comes in response to multiple reports saying representatives of DOGE are visiting the Fiscal Service offices to access the Central Accounting Reporting System. The American Civil Liberties Union of West Virginia helped organize the demonstration. ACLU Executive Director Eli Baumwell says DOGE is an unsanctioned agency with insufficient oversight to access potentially sensitive systems that track the government's finances.
We have a process for creating agencies, for appropriating funds. We have a process for how we do our reviews. And when a president comes in and takes someone who has not been confirmed, hires people who have not been vetted, who have not gone through security processes, they risk our privacy and they undermine the processes that we have in place to have checks and balances in our government.
Wood County Democratic Party Chair Jeff Fox echoes those concerns.
I think I share a lot of the concerns that all Americans share about personal information being accessed by people with what I would call kind of non-vetted permission to look at our information.
Fox adds he and others are concerned that DOGE's visit could signal job cuts.
We're just concerned about the possible cutting of jobs and laying off of people. And our area economy has been struggling for 60 years. We're in a very kind of precipitous spot.
We've been unable to verify firsthand the reports of DOGE's visit. The Bureau of the Fiscal Service has yet to respond to a request for comment. A Bureau of Fiscal Service employee who wished to remain anonymous said, quote, "There was no formal notice to any Bureau employees except those who may actually encounter DOGE," unquote. Senator Shelley Moore Capito's office released a statement saying the senator is monitoring the situation and has been in communication with the Bureau of the Fiscal Service's leadership. We received no response to requests for comment from the offices of Senator Jim Justice, Congressman Riley Moore, Governor Patrick Morrisey, or Wood County Delegate and Republican Party Chair Scott Heckert. In Parkersburg, Chase Campbell, WTAP News.